Ice Cube just turned down $9 million. Not because he couldn't use it, not because the script was bad. He walked away because of a principle that cost him everything Hollywood values most: momentum. And if you think that's where the pain ends, you haven't heard the story he's been carrying since he was 12 years old. Before we get into it, hit that like button if you've ever felt the weight of a decision that changed everything. Ice Cube was born O'Shea Jackson on June 15, 1969, in South Central Los Angeles. His father worked maintenance at UCLA, coming home every night with the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones. His mother pulled hospital shifts, protecting her kids with a love that was equal parts fierce and frightened. Money was tight, but they made it work. Dinner was quiet most nights, just the sound of forks on plates and a clock ticking somewhere in the background. He grew up with his older brother Clyde in a neighborhood where sirens were the soundtrack of childhood. The family had creativity in their blood, connected to artists like Del the Funky Homo Sapien. But listen to this. That artistic spark couldn't shield a 12-year-old boy from what was coming. This is where it all falls apart. Ice Cube was 12 when his sister Beverly died. She was in her late teens, and the news hit their house like a wrecking ball. He watched his mother collapse, hands covering her face like she could block out reality. His father just stared at the floor, searching for something solid in a world that had just shattered beneath him. At the funeral, young O'Shea stood on the sidewalk with his hands in his pockets, feeling something inside him drop into a place he'd never reach again. The house changed after that. Grief took a seat at their table and never left. His mother spent hours staring out windows at nothing. His father spoke less with each passing day. Ice Cube moved through those rooms like he was afraid to disturb a memory he wasn't ready to touch. Years later, he'd admit that losing Beverly changed how he looked at every sunrise. It taught him how fragile life really is, and how quickly someone can be taken from you. Here's where it really explodes. That loss turned him into someone older than his years. Walking through South Central, he carried an awareness most kids don't have, that safety isn't guaranteed, that tomorrow isn't promised. At school, he felt like an outsider carrying invisible weight. Even laughter from other kids sounded distant, like it belonged to a world he was no longer part of. Around 14, almost by accident, he found the thing that would save him. A friend challenged him to write some lines. What came out surprised everyone, especially him. Words that felt heavier and truer than anything he'd said out loud. He started writing late into the night, hunched over a small desk under a dim bulb, turning the pain in his chest into verses that carried both sorrow and rhythm. And then came the bombshell. No teacher ever taught him how to write. Only grief did. Every morning he'd board a bus from South Central to Woodland Hills, heading to Taft High School. The ride felt like traveling between two different planets. Polished floors, easy laughter, faces that looked at him with curiosity or caution. He walked those halls carrying grief so tightly stitched inside him that nobody could see the weight he dragged from class to class. This next part, straight up wild. In 1987, he enrolled at the Phoenix Institute of Technology to study architectural drafting. He was good at it too, sharp focus, disciplined hands. But even the clean lines of blueprints couldn't quiet what was breaking inside him. After a year, he stepped away from that safe path and came back to Los Angeles with nothing but determination and unfinished business. It wasn't rebellion, it was survival. He needed a place where everything he couldn't say out loud could finally breathe. Music gave him that space. With his cousin Sir Jinx, he formed CIA, performing at backyard parties where Dr. Dre kept the energy alive behind the turntables. Those gatherings were loud and electric, everything his quiet home wasn't. Brace yourself for this one. At 16, Ice Cube sold Boys in the Hood to Eazy-E. For the first time, someone beyond his neighborhood saw him not as just another kid from South Central, but as a voice worth hearing. That moment shifted the air around him. Fame was still far away, but something had changed. When he joined NWA, Ice Cube became the sharpest pen in the room. Straight Outta Compton exploded in 1988, forcing America to face realities it had been ignoring. His lyrics didn't entertain, they confronted. But things were about to explode. While the world echoed his words, the paperwork told a different story. Contracts that hid what he deserved. Promises wrapped in praise. A paycheck of only $32,000 for an album selling in the millions. And that's when the tables turned. Walking away in 1989 felt like stepping into darkness without a map, but he chose dignity over comfort, fully aware that the price for honesty was loneliness. The early 90s proved why he'd been the backbone all along. America's Most Wanted in 1990 hit like a national alarm. Death Certificate followed in 1991. Then came The Predator in 1992. selling over 2 million copies and becoming the only album that year to top both the pop and R&B charts. At just 23, he was shaping the country's conversation, but greatness is heavy. 16-hour days, sleeping on tour buses, losing his voice between shows. It gets worse. As new sounds rose, G-Funk, East Coast waves, the next generation, his earthquakes became tremors. Few pains cut deeper than watching a new era walk through the door you broke open without knowing who cracked it first. Now here's where it gets insane. Hollywood offered a new battlefield. In 1991, John Singleton saw something raw in his eyes that couldn't be trained. Boys in the Hood turned him into an actor the industry couldn't dismiss. But acceptance wasn't waiting. He walked into casting rooms where people saw a rapper before they saw a performer. Friday in 1995 changed everything. A film he wrote and starred in, flipping a $3.5 million budget into $28 million. Through Cube Vision, he produced hits like Barbershop. 75 million. Are we there yet? Nearly 100 million. And 21 Jump Street. Success didn't make the weight lighter. It turns darker from here. The higher he climbed, the more suffocating the air became. Meetings past midnight, budgets so large they felt like holding dynamite. The fear that one mistake could erase years of trust. Then came Big 3 in 2017. Turning a rapper into the owner of a professional sports league sounded impossible to everyone. Yet he built it anyway. Arenas, athletes, contracts, lawsuits. Every decision came with zeros that could shake anyone's confidence. The league burned through millions before making a dollar. There were nights he stared at the numbers, knowing failure here wouldn't just cost money, it would cost legacy. This part left everyone stunned. By the time he climbed from nothing to a net worth over $150 million, the world had changed, and so had Hollywood. In 2021, Ice Cube quietly walked away from the film. Oh hell no, turning down a role reportedly worth $9 million because he refused to take the vaccine the studio required. He didn't protest, he didn't argue. He simply said no, and accepted everything that decision would cost. Here's where the truth hits hard. In Hollywood, $9 million isn't just a paycheck, it's momentum, it's protection, it's the kind of stability even legends fight to hold on to. Later, he admitted the loss stung deeper than money. That quiet place where principle and consequence collide, and neither side walks away clean. But this next twist, game-changing. What followed was worse than losing the role. It was the feeling that Hollywood, the place he'd poured 3 decades into, was drifting forward without him. Not punishing him, not shutting him out, just moving on. And sometimes that's the crueler wound. He watched younger names fill spaces he once occupied, watched new rules settle into the industry, watched opportunities appear in rooms where his name wasn't the first anyone mentioned. There were days when the phone stayed still, when a script he believed in went to someone else, when meetings ended with polite smiles and unspoken doubts. That's when everything unraveled. For a man who built doors where none existed, realizing the world no longer checked if he was standing on the other side cut deeper than any headline. Days when the whisper, "Your time has passed," felt louder than applause ever did. But Ice Cube had met that whisper before. At 19, when he left NWA with nothing but truth, when critics dismissed his solo work, when he stepped into acting, when he launched Big 3, every bold move was called a mistake until it wasn't. And then, total chaos. His career bruised him, tested him, reshaped him, but his family steadied every storm. Long before fame, he met Kimberly Woodruff. She didn't fall for him at first, but something in the quiet confidence of how she moved made him pause. By 1992, they were married, standing at the edge of fame, but still 2 young people counting grocery money under yellow kitchen lights. It spirals from here. Hollywood gives bright lights, but demands shadows in return. As his star climbed, the cost at home deepened. Kimberly ate dinners alone, tucked 5 children into bed on nights when his schedule blurred into airports and cold hotel rooms. He missed birthdays, school plays, first steps. Then came the night that carved itself into their marriage, their son's birthday. The candles burned low. Kimberly checked the door again and again. When their son asked, "Is Dad coming?" she whispered, "He's trying." But Ice Cube didn't make it. Hours later, he stood in the hallway, keys in hand, listening to silence press against the walls. Through a cracked door, he saw Kimberly at the table, head bowed, balloons drooping. Their son slept on the couch, still clutching the wrapped gift meant for his father. In that moment, something inside him fractured. He'd gained the world but was losing the time that mattered most. What saved them was an apology. It was staying, even when staying hurt. Ice Cube began coming home differently, slower, present in ways he hadn't been before. Kimberly noticed the shift and softened. Their 5 children, O'Shea Jr., Daryl, Karima, Deja, and Sharif, unknowingly stitched their parents back together. This is where the mask falls off. In 2015, when O'Shea Jr. portrayed his father in Straight Outta Compton, the family sat together in a dark theater. As the film flickered across the screen, Cube watched his own life reflected through his son's eyes. Every loss, every bruise, every victory. Something inside him healed with a softness he hadn't expected. But listen to this. The world remembers the day Eazy-E left us. Headlines flashing. Stunned silence rolling through Los Angeles. He was only 31. For Ice Cube, it was the loss of a brother he never got to forgive. They'd stood shoulder to shoulder in cramped studios, 2 kids from the margins trying to turn raw sound into legacy. Fame lifted them, money divided them, pride silenced them. Then life closed a door neither knew was about to lock forever. Cube still remembered that first studio, the dusty smell, the secondhand equipment, the way Eazy leaned back with that knowing nod. It was Eazy who believed in him when his name held no weight. Eazy who bought Boys in the Hood when Cube was 16. In those early years, it felt like destiny was theirs alone. But lightning burns as fast as it shines. Contracts twisted in tensions. Loyalty turned to tension. Cube walked away in 1989, carrying anger and regret. They drifted. 2 men who once shared everything, now separated by silence, too heavy to break. You won't believe what happened next. Early 1995, the call came. Eazy-E was in the hospital. Serious complications from an AIDS diagnosis had led to severe pneumonia. Cube felt 8 years of arguments. Every lyric aimed like a blade. Every moment he thought he could fix later, slam into him all at once. When Cube walked through the hospital doors, everything felt wrong. The sterile brightness, the quiet corridors, the distant beeping. He approached the room, hand brushing the cold metal handle, and froze. He couldn't go in. Later, he confessed softly, "I didn't know what I would have said." On March 26, 1995, Eazy-E was gone. With him went the last fragile chance to repair what had fractured. At the funeral, surrounded by cameras and fans, Ice Cube stood with a weight no headline could capture. Those close to him said the regret settled into his chest like something that would never completely loosen. In the years that followed, Cube spoke of E with a tenderness that revealed the truth, not as a rival, but as the friend who gave him his first real shot. "We were just kids," he said once, "kids trying to make something out of nothing." Maybe that's why the loss cut so deeply. They'd been young together, hopeful, reckless, brilliant, flawed, believing life would always give them one more chance. The real chaos starts here. Today, Ice Cube's life looks different. His Marina del Rey mansion sits along the Grand Canal, with floor-to-ceiling glass, floating staircases, ocean breezes. His Encino estate spans 8,000 square feet with 7 bedrooms, a recording room, full gym, resort-style pool. His garage holds nearly $700,000 worth of luxury cars, including a pristine '64 Chevy Impala, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, a Porsche Panamera. For a man who started with notebooks and determination, these aren't symbols of excess. They're reminders of survival and generational strength. Big 3 continues to grow. When he steps on stage, the crowd feels the unmistakable charge of someone who remembers fighting for a single microphone. At home, life is quieter now, fuller, steadier. He and Kimberly still share the partnership they committed to in 1992. O'Shea Jr. is a successful actor, often dropping by with his own child, turning Ice Cube into a grandfather with a softness few fans see. Some days the house fills with all 5 children. Other days, it's just the 2 of them walking at sunset, talking about family and the simple joy of reaching an age where home means more than any premiere. And it gets even messier. Time has touched him, but instead of softening him, it's refined him. There's calmness in his eyes now, clarity in how he speaks, as if he finally understands the world can change around him all at once. The man at the center remains unshaken. So what's the saddest story of his life? Maybe it's losing Beverly at 12 and carrying that weight for 44 years. Maybe it's standing outside Eazy's hospital room, frozen, never getting to say goodbye. Maybe it's missing his son's birthday, seeing his wife alone at that table. Or maybe it's watching Hollywood drift forward at 56, being told your time has passed. But here's the thing about Ice Cube. Every storm taught him something, and he's still standing. What part of his story hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. And if this one moved you, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one.